The name's Bond. James Bond. Yes, today I am reviewing, in case you didn't get it, a James Bond novel. And that novel is Moonraker, written by Ian Fleming. And I just wanted to point out that since Ian Fleming has passed away, I don't know when he did, but a while ago, there have been a lot of authors who have written James Bond novels, and it says, like, influenced by Ian Fleming, or this person writing as Ian Fleming, or some weird thing like that. But this is actually an original James Bond novel, actually written by Ian Fleming, and adapted into a movie starring, if I remember correctly, Roger Moore. Although I haven't seen it, I have no idea what the movie is like. So, I have read a couple of James Bond novels before. The ones that I have read besides Moonraker are Thunderball, which was absolutely ridiculous. It's kind of like that, I feel like, the campy, silly James Bond that people think of when they think of the older James Bond movies. Like, they're still entertaining, but, like, the plans are ridiculous. They're not that serious. James Bond's fighting sharks in a tank with a freaking electric zappy pole thing. Like, that kind of ridiculous Thunderball ness. But the theme song Thunderball with Tom Jones, fantastic. Anyway, and I've also read Casino Royale, which I don't know if I've talked about Casino Royale before on any other episodes of mine, but the adaptation of Casino Royale with Daniel Craig, so the first James Bond movie of, like, the newer ones, was actually a pretty faithful adaptation of the original Casino Royale novel. So I feel like James Bond started out as a very serious actual spy novel, and yeah, the Daniel Craig one was different in the sense that it was set in a period that wasn't the 50s or the 60s. I can't remember. I think it's during the 50s that Casino Royale takes place. And so, yeah, they made the time period different to be more modern, but the overall, I can't speak, the overall story as I remember from the movie, the Daniel Craig version, and the book were actually quite similar, which surprised me because the only other ones that I had seen up till I saw Casino Royale and up until I read the book, Casino Royale, were the Sean Connery versions of James Bond, which are kind of like the more silly, fun ones, but I do love them. So to see that the original book, the first James Bond book, Casino Royale, was more of a serious spy novel and was pretty dark, actually, was very interesting when I read that. Just throwing that out there, that has nothing to do with Moonraker. I mean, I did say that because I felt that Moonraker is not the strongest James Bond novel. It doesn't have enough kind of silliness to it to be entertaining in that way. And so I feel like it is more serious, but to me, compared to Casino Royale, it was kind of boring. There was just, it seemed like a lot of exposition and a lot, like, leading up to an actual story, and it's quite clear who the villain is, although I'm just gonna say the James Bond villain I really can't speak today. The James Bond villain Blofeld sometimes disguises himself, and that's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to say if he was the villain or he wasn't, but it's never, it's never not clear who the villain is in a Bond movie, right? Like, is that only me, or is it always like, no duh, that's who it is? At least in the older ones and in the novels. So that's not a shock. But like I said, compared to the other two that I've read, this one was just kind of eh. And I felt like it was a very stereotypical plot of, like, trying to destroy Buckingham Palace and other things like that, trying to get rid of the Queen, or trying to get revenge on MI6 and the 00 agents, and whatever. So I thought it was kind of a very stereotypical story, actually, and of course there was the obligatory James Bond femme fatale scene where they're swimming in the ocean together, and I'm like, really? Like, it is in every James Bond novel, and it's always a different woman, and it cracks me up. Like, it's just so ridiculous. I don't know. I get it. He can't settle down. He's an MI6 agent. He's a secret agent, whatever. He can't settle down. So there's going to be a different babe in every story. But I didn't realize that the books were exactly like that too, where every single one, different woman, obligatory, we're swimming in the ocean or we're fooling around in bed scene. Like, it was kind of entertaining in that regard that, oh, this is just like the 60s movies with Sean Connery or whenever those movies come out. I can't remember. 60s, 70s? The last one came out in the 70s? It's bad, I don't remember. Well, anyway. Was it late 60s, 70s? Anyway, the Sean Connery movies, you know what I'm talking about. Okay. Moving on. It was still entertaining enough for me to read all the way through it. There are some books where I start it and, you know, then you kind of like skim read or you're like, I'm just going to flip to the end and see who the murder was because, like, I want to know because I have that curiosity and desire to fill that, but I don't want to waste my time reading all of it because it's really boring. So it wasn't that boring to me. I was able to make it through. And I do feel like if you have never read a James Bond novel, because it's not like it's a huge prevalent thing in society today, but it has become a thing that's just lasted for years. And, you know, it has, how many movies now? 25 or something? I don't even know, that are made based on the James Bond character. And so I do think that if you have never read a James Bond novel, that you definitely should at least read one by Ian Fleming. To me, it doesn't matter which one, just to see what it's like. There were a couple things I thought were interesting. I'm going to try and find the exact line real quick. But, you know, there's the theory, you know, that James Bond isn't James Bond's actual name. It's a code name, blah, 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 because he's a secret agent, blah, etc., etc. There was a part at the very beginning of the book where M, the leader of, you know, his Secret Service agency, and sorry, the lighting just got, like, way brighter in here. Sorry that it changes. I'm just using natural light right now. And the sun just came out from behind the clouds. So sorry about that random change in light. Anyway, the line is, so M is talking to Bond, and he says, James, that was unusual. It was rare for M to use a Christian name in this workroom. And so I feel like that's just kind of proof that James Bond is not his actual name because it says a Christian name, not his Christian name. I don't know, but I think people sometimes read too much into that, and, like, honestly, it doesn't matter because he's a made-up character. But there is that whole theory, and so playing into that, because I was reading the book, when I read that line, I was like, oh yeah, all these James Bond conspiracy theorist people, that's not his real name, and this and that, and whatever. So I guess that's a point towards the people that say that's not his real name, and that's just his cover name because he's an agent, and honestly, I would agree with that, because as an agent, you shouldn't be using your real name, and boom, I just found definitive proof in an actual James Bond novel that James Bond isn't his real name. Anyway, I thought that was interesting, and also it mentioned that they have to retire when they're 45 from the, what do they work for, MI6? I believe, right? I hope I didn't just make that up. Anyway, yikes, I just read this and I can't even remember the agency's name. I'm bad. They have to retire when they're 45, so I thought that was interesting. So now you know that James Bond is younger than 45, and maybe James Bond isn't his actual name. But that makes sense, because I guess, you know, because the way the James Bond novels play out, there's a lot of fighting and random stuff happening and surviving, like, you know, rock sides or car accidents and stuff like that, sharks in a tank. And so to have him be too old as an agent, you know, the MI6 wants them to retire after the age of 45 so they can still be of use to them but not be out in the field and be a danger since, you know, they're so old by the time they're 45. I found that interesting. Yeah, I feel like I don't have much else to say about that, and I just blah-blahed about other James Bond novels and conspiracy theories. But like I said, I would definitely suggest reading a James Bond novel. I mean, I would obviously suggest Casino Royale, because I think that of the whole three that I've read, which isn't a lot, that it was the best of the three that I've read, and I should definitely check out more. I probably will actually check out more James Bond novels. You can read Moonraker if you want. Like, if you want to read all of them, definitely do. But I don't know if I would suggest it as your first James Bond novel. But like I said, if you want to get around to it, get around to it. Read it. If you want to read all of them, definitely read it. Because you have to if you want to read all of them by Ian Fleming. So yeah, that was Moonraker by Ian Fleming, James Bond novel. And of course, the question is, who is your favorite James Bond? It's Sean Connery. Like, let's be real. Okay, he was the first one that I saw, and I also had a crush on him, and this is when I was like 7. So I've always liked older men, I guess. And yeah, I had a crush on Sean Connery as James Bond. And he is James Bond. When I read the books, that is who I picture. I don't think Daniel Craig is bad. I think he would be my second choice. They're just a lot, like, grittier. And I feel like Daniel Craig doesn't have, and I've only seen Casino Royale and the second one, Quantum of Solace, and I don't remember anything about the second one. But I feel like he doesn't have, like, the charm that James Bond also has in the novels, like this happy charisma, kind of flirting with the girls type side. Maybe he does, but I really don't remember. So, Sean Connery, he is James Bond, definitely 100% picture him when I read the books. But if I had to choose a second from the movies, it would be Daniel Craig, because it was still good. It was so good. Yeah. Thank you so much for listening. I have a podcast now called Fighting for Writing, which you can totally fine. I'll link my link tree in the description below so you can find all the platforms that streams on. And you can check out my website, tatesapb.com, also my Instagram, which is just tatesapb. And please like, follow, and subscribe here as well. I do try and put out videos every Friday of books that I have read. It just depends on if I have had time that week to read, though, to be honest. And yeah, comment down below, who is your favorite James Bond? And if it isn't Sean Connery, I don't know if we can be friends. Yeah, just kidding. I don't care that much. Thank you so much, and y'all have a great day.